Hello again and welcome to Pearl Magazine. Fast fashion hit the stores a decade ago, but as people become more environmentally conscious, many want to avoid adding to landfills and are instead finding ways to upcycle their clothes, staying on trend both in style and ecologically. And it's not just clothes being upcycled. Toys are being rehomed rather than tossed out. April Joe tells us more. Hi, Dave. Hello. 你好。你好。
On this day, Dave Kwok is here to collect old toys from Anna. He's recycled old toys for the last 5 years.
好多玩具有鋼船陀螺啦、足球機啦、大富翁啦、氣墊球等等嘅玩具。
其實香港有好多嘅小朋友啦。
In Hong Kong, many children have a lot of toys. These come from their parents and relatives and friends. They also receive toys as birthday and Christmas gifts.
呢啲佢哋都收到好多禮物嘅。
They have so much they don't even have time to play.
咁呢啲玩具咧有好大。
There's a good chance they just throw them away, creating waste.
咁其實就會嘥啦。
After collecting the toys, Dave returns to his toy warehouse. But before any kids can play with them again, there's a lot of repair work needed.
我哋回收咗啲玩具翻嚟之後咧，咁我哋首先
After bringing back the toys, we check and examine each one and see if there are any missing parts and if they're broken or bear any wear and tear. Toys from this family are quite complete and tidy, and since the power can go on, it proves it's still functioning.
After his inspection, Dave cleans and sanitizes them. Boxes of toys fill the entire room at Dave's warehouse. He separates them into categories. After they're fully restored, they're finally ready to be donated.
咁我哋因為轉贈嘅對象啦，都係小學生啦，咁所以我哋回收。
Our targets are mostly primary school students, so we collect mainly toys suitable for this age group, like Beyblades and also toy cars, which are popular.
小朋友咧都好中意嘅。
It's best if the toys can inspire creativity and can educate them in some way.
Families with children who can't afford to buy new toys can contact Dave. Once there's a request, Dave will choose the suitable ones for them. He pays more attention on the selection when the recipients are children with special education needs.
For children with hearing impairment, we usually choose toys without sound. For the autistic kids, we pick toys that they may like, for example, toy trains.
Today, Dave meets a family with 2 children in Tuen Mun.
When we select toys for donation, usually we will consider their age, gender, and their preference as well. I brought 2 kinds of toys today, toys for boys and toys for girls. We have learned that the boy is fond of building blocks. So I've brought block toys for him and also some DIY science sets and toy cars. The girl is much younger, so I've brought her toys for younger kids. Underprivileged families lack toys because they can't afford them. Some children don't have any toys at all. We recycle toys and donate them to kids in need. Hopefully, toys can become part of their childhood. It also helps ease their family financial burden. Through recycling and reuse, I hope to inspire sustainable environmental protection as well.
The recycling industry emphasizes the key concept of sustainability. Sustainable fashion has also been a hot topic in recent years, as clothes recycling faces growing challenges. Statistics show that the world consumes about 80 billion pieces of new clothing a year. In Hong Kong, a typical consumer spends an average $10,000 per year on new clothes.
大概幾耐會買一次衫嘅？
我諗通常都係1個月1件啫，好難講咯，睇到中意就會買咯。
大概半年咯。
Studies show that among the 80 billion garments purchased globally, An estimated 60% are discarded into landfills after just 1 year. According to an industry survey, 37% of global consumers repeatedly donate their unwanted clothing. In Asia, Hong Kong is ranked number 1.
唔着衫可能會俾親戚啩。會係抌咗佢咯，捐俾有需要嘅人。會抌喺嗰啲唔係有箱嘅咩嗰啲，好似樓下嗰啲，會放喺環保箱嗰度咯。石落回收箱多㗎，我哋本身屋苑有回收箱。
But one clothing recycler says the industry is overloaded with unwanted clothes.
The storage space is a big challenge for our contractors. As we all know, the space in Hong Kong is very precious, and the outlets we can handle used clothes is very limited. And in the past 5 or 10 years, the growing popularity of fast fashion and online shopping has quite an impact on the used clothes industry, where new clothes is quite cheap now. So the demand of second-hand or used clothes will also decrease.
Brian Chan is the manager of a clothing recycling project. His organization has recycled used clothes since 2000. There are 139 recycling banks in various communities and private estates throughout Hong Kong, so people can drop off their unwanted clothes. They mostly re-export the clothing collected to Southeast Asian countries to be sold in local second-hand markets.
Since the beginning of the pandemic, all the long-term recycling banks within the private estates have been closed. Around 6 of the community banks you see on the streets has also been suspended, so there are around a 44% decrease in the recovery rate when we compare the total from last year to the previous year. The banks has to be suspended because most of the South Asian countries has restrictions regarding exporting and importing used goods.
Some discarded clothing gets temporarily stored in the office.
There are some formal clothes, like suits, pants. There are dress shirts, quite a few. And there are some everyday clothes, like these jeans and t-shirts. The style of the suits may be a bit too old-fashioned, so the chance of it being reused or resold is marginal, I would say. This one where the color has been changed from white to yellowish, so it's not as good for exporting or reuse purposes.
Brian says they're searching for new ways to deal with the used clothes. But he says the biggest message the public needs to know is to reduce buying.
Share your clothes with your friends and families before you consider recycle them. We also have some education elements in the media to educate the public on how to take care of your clothes or even upcycling your clothes into different objects. So you can make use of these used clothes before you consider to recycle them.
A 2015 study by a UK charity found that less than 1% of clothing manufactured worldwide was recycled into new fibers for the clothing industry. Analysts say much of the problem comes down to the clothes are made from problematic blends of fibers. This makes them hard to separate for effective recycling. To tackle this problem, one local experimental project began in 2018. It's upcycling post-consumer garments into new recycled garments.
This is a direct-to-consumer recycling concept. And the idea here is we ask consumers to bring in their old clothes, and we will, over the course of 8 steps, turn their old clothes back down to fiber, make new yarns out of them, and we give them a 3D knitted new garment using the materials that they bring in.
Edwin Kay's textile research group designed the technology. The CEO says the 8 steps serve as a full mini-scale production line. It takes around 4 hours to finish processing one garment. Edwin says they can recycle almost any garment with their system.
We are not very selective about the materials. We would like people to bring in what they have, and we will try to break down as much of it as we can. We would prefer things like sweaters and T-shirts, things that are a little bit looser in construction, but we'll try and break down anything that you bring.
He says the technology has proven itself after recycling more than 400 garments. The group accepts online bookings directly from consumers. So far, about 100 people have made bookings.
We have a consultation with the customer to decide what they want, and we can actually even help them with things like maybe they want a different color. We can blend other colors into it. So if you bring in a red garment and you want a pink garment, we blend in some white, or if you want it darker, we blend in some darker colors. The types of styles that you can make, it depends on the programming. So we are not designers, and so far it's still a little bit more basic.
A retail model of the system was recently set up inside a shopping mall in Sweden. Edwin says his research institute wants to improve efficiency and also the design of the products.
We are probably one of the first generations in history to think of our apparel as disposables and not as durables. It is an opportunity for us as a society to rethink some of these fundamental consumption habits. Going forward, I think not only do we have to reduce the amount of waste that we generate, but we also have to get to a point in which we are not using new materials to make our clothes, but we are circulating the materials that we have in the marketplace already so that we can be a lot more circular and we can be carbon neutral as an industry.
When we come back, best to avoid beating around the bush unless you're looking to catch a snake. Find out more when Pearl Magazine returns. Welcome back. The centuries-old practice of consuming snake soup for one's health has been dwindling in Hong Kong. Purported to improve circulation, immunity, and joint pain, there are still a few places one can find this delicacy. Reporter Tina Zhang finds out how some snake handlers have ended up in the soup business and if they may go the same way as their prey. On this cold afternoon, people are queuing to be seated in this small restaurant. For many people living in the southern part of China, this gooey soup made from snakes is the best cold weather treat they can get.
Traditionally, the main ingredients of snake soup are 5 types of snakes: the Chinese cobra, banded kite, Chinese rat snake, radiated rat snake, and long-nosed pit viper.
Chow Ka-ling is the owner of this shop. She's been cooking snake soup for 50 years.
First, we boil the soup with 15 kilograms of snake bones. This snake has no fat and it's low cholesterol, so it has almost no flavor. We would add 2 chickens and 10 kilograms of pork bones and simmer that for 6 hours. Then you drain the bones and the soup is ready. On top of that, we added cooked snake meat, thickening it with cornstarch and water. After seasoning, it's ready to serve.
Snake soup is an ancient Chinese recipe that has been passed down for centuries. Many believe that consuming it is good for their health.
If you have snake soup often, you are less likely to catch the flu, and your immune system can be strengthened. You feel warm, too.
Chow says the snake and the herbs she adds to the soup can help speed up blood circulation and cure arthritis.
This is the treasure, I think. People would just do it on like winter and autumn. Yeah, but I think it's quite good for me, like made me feel warm. The taste is like more like protein, like chicken.
Sometimes you have pain after injuries when you play sports. They make you heal much quicker. And
Bronick has been consuming snake soup since he was a child.
when I was about 6 or 7, my father come here up New Street to buy electronic products, and every time he would take me to the shop. Eventually, when I go to school in Britain, every time when I return from my vacation, I will come to here for my snake soup. They have been keeping the prices very steady when everything in the market has already increased.
Nowadays, a bowl of snake soup costs just a little over $40. But Chow recalls that in the old days, eating snake was a privilege.
When I joined the industry, a snake gallbladder and a pot of snake soup cost over $200. In the 1970s, people's monthly salary was just $500 to $700. Snake used to be a luxury dish enjoyed by wealthy people. My father used to say Cantonese opera singers would come over and order a shot of snake gallbladder before going on stage so that they would have a better voice.
Chow's father used to domesticate the snakes to make them easier to handle. He established the shop in 1965 and trained up Chow to eventually take over the business.
I was scared at first. My dad then let me touch some dead snakes. Gradually, I learned how to handle them.
Chow is one of the few female snake catchers in the city. Over the years, the risky job has left her with a number of snake bites.
There was a time a cobra bit my finger, and another time I was bitten by a 5-pace viper. That almost killed me. My mom asked all my siblings to come back home for a final goodbye.
Luckily, she recovered. Over the years, she has been through ups and downs with the shop.
In the 1980s, I was selling snake gallbladders and soup. Business was really good. But during SARS in 2003, wild snakes were suspected to be the origin and carrier of the virus. Even though they cleared its name in the end, I suffered losses the next 3 years.
Chow used to source wild snakes from mainland China. But 17 years ago, snake farms as well as popular snake dishes were banned in the wake of the SARS epidemic. After that, she had to import snakes from other countries in Southeast Asia. Overhunting created a decline in the wild snake population. The lack of supply made it tough to run her business.
I can't see the future. We rely on imported snakes from overseas. If other countries shut the door, I won't be able to do business anymore. It's out of my control. Honestly, this is a dying trade. If I have apprentices, they won't be able to make a living, so I don't plan to train successors.
Despite the gloomy outlook, one man has decided to enter the industry.
Most of the snake catchers in Hong Kong are in their 70s or 80s or preparing to retire. I think there should be someone joining to help. I've liked reptiles since I was a kid. I would climb the mountains or search country parks to find wild animals and observe their behavior.
Lee joined the trade at an early age. At 17, he was self-taught and became a registered snake catcher.
In 2020, I caught roughly 100 snakes in 2 or 3 districts. On average, every snake catcher can capture about 80 to 100 per year.
Lee and Chow are among the 10-odd snake catchers in the city that remain in practice. Most of them are operators of snake restaurants.
No one really wants to join because it doesn't pay very well and it's highly risky. So you need to have a passion to keep doing this.
Lee says he gets paid $800 per call-out. But unlike most commercial catchers who often sell their catch to snake restaurants, Lee wants to protect the wild snakes from getting hurt.
I'm sad to see that sometimes when I arrive at the scene, security guards or residents have already beaten the snake to death. In fact, very rarely would a snake hurt people, but they will if they're attacked. I don't recommend people to try to handle it or even hurt it, because that movement may put you at risk.
A reptile expert says it's not unusual for snakes to be spotted in the urban areas of the territory.
The network of stormwater drains and sewage systems that run under the city, electrical ducting, things like that, can all provide somewhere that the right species of snake could live. So some will be resident there and occasionally then come up from underground or out of the urban park and frighten some people. Other snakes, though, will also be wild snakes from the hillsides in Hong Kong, which get flushed down in heavy rain and storms, things like that, and turn up accidentally within these urban areas.
He says that in the old days, snake catchers could keep the snakes they caught, but things have changed over the last 20 years.
What was happening back then, prior to 1999, if there was a nuisance snake came into somebody's property, they may call the police would go on scene, the police who are not snake catchers would reach out to the only people they knew that could help them, and that was the sewongs that operate a lot of the snake meat and snake soup restaurants across Hong Kong. So a sewong would attend the scene and they would catch the snake for the police, and then the sewong would take the snake away back to the restaurant. And the police realized that they were actually assisting native Hong Kong wildlife in getting into the human food chain, and they thought this was not an ideal situation.
The police were looking for a better way to deal with that. So, starting from 1999, the snakes caught by the catchers would be diverted to the Kaduri farm and then released back to nature.
Some people might be alarmed by that. They might think, oh my goodness, you're putting dangerous snakes into the wild. We're not making any net gain in the number of snakes. The snakes that go back to the wild are all snakes that came from there in the first place. So the same number of snakes are there, the same level of risk.
Over the past 20 years, Paul and his team have managed to rescue about 15,000 wild snakes that otherwise would have been dropped into the cooking pot.
I'm a little horrified at the idea of actually eating them because I've seen what's inside and the sicknesses, a lot of the parasites that they carry. Maybe back then, when you were consuming a snake, it did confer some sort of improvement to your health at that time of year when you had limited access to other foods and vitamins and minerals. But now, in the current modern world, we have an awful lot of synthetic additives and supplements that we can take, and there really is no longer any good justification for consuming things like wild snakes and other wild products as well.
He understands that the public tends to have a fear of snakes, but encourages people to learn more before taking action.
If you learn more about them, you find out that only a teeny 6 out of 50 are potentially dangerous. Most of them are totally harmless, and they have very important benefits to the ecosystem. They don't always have to be panicked, call the police, or injured even. They could just have a door opened and be allowed to go back to nature where they have been living around us for a very long time.
That's our show for this week. Next week on Pearl Magazine, meet those who have fled their country and ended up in Hong Kong to find success, despite the numerous obstacles they've encountered. Thanks for watching. See you next time.